Hello everyone, this is Sandesh here. Today I'm gonna discuss about module 5 of 18CS44, that is microcontroller and embedded systems of VTU syllabus for computer science engineering department. So the module 5 basically is all about real-time operating system and the integrated development environment for embedded system design. So far, in last previous four modules, we got to know what is a microcontroller and what is embedded system. How microcontroller can be used to adopt for any embedded applications, right? So here we just try to go into a point where how all the resources can be utilized to perform multiple tasks. Okay, basically when I'm talking about embedded system, it really meant for to perform a certain functionalities. So all this functionality need not to be come up with a single task. It may have multiple tasks, and all these tasks might be synchronized, may not be synchronized, and the task need not to be always execute one after the other. The order of the execution of the task also get vary according to the response or some other dependence. So keeping all this complexity in mind, how exactly all the system resources going to be get used by controllers in the embedded system. Okay, so keeping this view, we must have to understand what is RTOS and what is IDE in embedded system design. So when I start talking about a real-time operating system, we must have to understand the conventional way of executing the task and operating system way of executing the task. So keeping all these two in mind, let me first tell you what is superloop method, and later we will get into a operating system which helps to execute or scheduling the task. Okay, so let's go further. Basically the entire module going to be split further. So this is a part 1 of the module 5. Let's discuss the conventional task execution model, that is super loop based task execution model, where we execute the firmware which involves multiple tasks in it, but order of the execution of the task purely depends on how exactly it is, on which order it is listed within a loop. As we all know, when we talk about any of the embedded system, it may come up with multiple functionality. When we are talking about multiple functionality, it may come up with multiple task execution. So the utilization of the same resources for the execution of the multiple tasks is the job to do. So the modeling of execution, you can observe here in the example. Look at there in the while loop. Within a while loop, here we have declared only one particular task as a X right now. So, as I already said, it need not to be same. I just meant that it can be a multiple task to be executed. So, within a loop, you may declare task 1, task 2, task 3. In which order we just declared or listed within the loop. In the same order, the task executed on the regular intervals on a repeated times. So, in such uh, applications, we use such a simple super loop method. But here we have a problem. So, the problem is here the response are not so in real time basically. Here in this particular method, the executions are purely non-real time. I just meant that see, certain application demands time critical responses. Okay, so unless it receives the response, it won't go further for the execution. So the delay in the receiving the response may lead to a delay of execution of the next immediate task. That is the point to be considered. So when the task execution is required to be more dynamic with respect to scheduling of the task execution. Along with that, the response time calculation supposed to be very precise. Then this super loop method is a complete failure. So these super loop method can be considered where the tasks are not so time critical, where the tasks are repeated on the regular intervals in the same order. Then in such applications we can use this conventional super loop based task execution. So I just wanted to tell you, in the super loop method, the task execution is purely based on at what order the tasks are listed within the loop. So that is the point to be observed. But I was discussing about the problem. So in which particular application this is not suitable, if you ask me, there is a time critical applications. For example, in the case of flight control system, airbag control system, anti-lock brake systems, nuclear monitoring devices. Here the margin of error and response times are very critical. So the delay of a nanosecond, okay, will leads to a disaster, or it may have any catastrophic actions. But for the said applications which are time critical, you have to go with the operating system based approach for execution of the task. So in such cases, so these embedded systems where the response is very time critical and execution of the task are supposed to be dynamic. So this can be addressed, this requirement can be addressed by following points. The first point, you can observe assigning a priority to task and execute the high priority task first. So if I say there are three tasks to be get executed, say task A, task B, task C. Task B with a high priority, then task B going to be executed first, and similar way the next higher priority, and so on. So on the priority basis, the scheduling of execution of the task going to be happen. The second point, the dynamically change the priority of the task if required on need basis. That means to say, for example, I already said in the first point, in the example of task A, task B, task C, I stated the task B is having a high priority, so that will be executed first, and task A is having a second highest priority, that will be executed second, and task C, which is given with the least priority, going to be executed last. But this is not a static priority scheduling. The priority of the task may get vary, so that can be changed. So that based on the response, based on the requirement, the task scheduling also may get vary, so that best utilization of these resources can be adopted. At the last point, I would like to say, if introduction of the operating system for the execution of such firmwares will leads to have a greater performance in the embedded devices. So that is what this slide is all about. Let's begin our discussion on operating system. As I already said, the operating system based embedded systems are more dynamic, and the performance of the embedded systems also very high, purely because the scheduling technique is more evolved than the super loop model of executing the task. Keeping that in mind, let's try to understand what is operating system. Basically, operating system act as a bridge between user applications and underlying hardwares by providing the additional services. So this is pure, it act as a bridge, okay, between user applications or a task and the underlying system resources through set of system functionality. It can be a memory management or process management, time management, file system management, or input output system management. Figure given on the slide is an insight into a basic components of operating system and their interfaces with the rest of the world. The the purpose of having the operating system is here to utilize the system resources more effective manner by adopting different techniques to in it, and the performance of the embedded system also going to be enhanced because the embedded system operations are become more convenient for the usage. Okay, so those are the 2 points which I want to emphasize. Basically, the kernel is the core of an operating system. This kernel is responsible for managing the system resources and communicating among the hardware and other system services. The embedded system is dealing with multiple functionality or multiple tasks. So the scheduling of the task may happen one after the other, or there is a possibility that the pseudo parallelism may be adopted in the execution. So then that point of time the same resources might be required to be get shared among these two tasks. Then that point of time the kernel has its own role to play with respect to allocating the system resources along with the hardware for the system services. So the kernel basically act as a abstract layer between system resources and a user application. Yes, in our previous block diagram we have got to know that it is basically act as a bridge between these two. So in the when we are saying the operating system act as the bridge, so the core role of operating system going to be taken care by the kernel part of the operating system. So kernel basically contains a set of libraries and a few services. So when it comes to services, first services which I mentioned here is memory management, and then process management, time management, file system management, and input output system management. So let's go one after the other. The first one, the process management. Yes, this particular process management deals with managing the process or a task. When we have multiple process or a task to be get executed, then that point of time the managing this particular process or a task scheduling is the big role with respect to execution in the embedded system. So now it sets up a memory of the process. So each task or a process requires its own memory. That is basically a volatile memory, could be a RAM. So, but setting up the portion of the memory going to be taken care by process management and loading a process code into a memory. Once the memory is assigned to a particular process, it is very much needed to load the process code, which is a core part of that particular task. That code should be loaded into a memory. So next is allocating the system resources. Yes, this is very important. Looking at the available resources for the execution of multiple tasks. So when we go with the limited resources, it's very important to share the limited resources among the multiple tasks. So allocating the system in a very better manner by making a best utilization of system resources is a hectic job to play, but here in the process management by the kernel which offers this particular service. Coming to a next point, scheduling and managing the execution of the process. Of course, once we start sharing the system resources among multiple tasks or a process, scheduling and managing that multiple task is one of the important task. Again, one of the important job to do. That job going to be get done by process management. Coming to the next point, the process management play a role in setting up and managing the process control block basically. So process control block is nothing but this is one of the data structure generated by the operating system or kernel for each and every process. So once the process is created, the corresponding to that there will be a data structure which holds all the data corresponding to a process control block. Just have a look at this particular pictorial representation, the block diagram. You can see it may have process id, process state, process priority, and so on. As the process getting executed, even the process control block also gets updates. As the process gets terminated, even the the data structure created for the respective process also gets terminated. So that information, even data structure is terminated. Okay, so coming to the next point, inter-process communication and synchronization. As I already mentioned, when the multiple tasks or processes are getting executed, obviously there must be a great communication establishment across multiple tasks or process. And of course the synchronization has to be there, since all the task and process are sharing the common system resources. So that is going to be taken care by process management. Coming to a last part, which is termination of the process. The each process or a task has to be get ended. So that is going to be taken care by process management. It not only terminates it, and it may delete the particular process which just get done with the task. So that purely depends what kind of the requirement it has come up with. Coming to our next important services, that is primary memory management. Yes, already I have said. So allocation of the memory is supposed to happen, but basically the allocation of this memory going to be taken care by primary memory management. This primary memory management service offered by the kernel in the operating system, it basically refers to allocation of the RAM, okay, which is volatile in nature. So each and every process has to be get loaded onto this particular volatile memory, and you know that the small portion of the memory going to be used for the particular task execution. So the not entire the range of the memory being allotted to a one single task or a process. MMU can be responsible for the next 2 points which I mentioned right there. What exactly it does? It basically keeping a track of which part of the memory area is scheduled and shared by the process. That means, as I already said, so the memory blocks are going to be divided, and the part of that particular entire range of the memory going to be used by the one of the process among the multiple process or a task. So this is going to be taken care by memory management unit, and basically it take case on allocating and deallocating the memory space for the task or process going to be get done. Coming to our next particular service, that is a file system management service. So the word file, basically here it refers to collection of related informations. Okay, so the related informations are going to be get called here as a file, and this file could be a program or any text file, or it can be in the form of image, it can be documents, or it may be multimedia files like audio or video files. So coming to a file system management of kernel is responsible for creation or deletion of any files. Okay, it is having the ability of doing a alteration in that particular files. It also create, delete, or alter the directories. Okay, not only files, it can also does that operations. So, and it also take care on the saving the files in the secondary storage memory, and it provides flexible naming conversions that particular situation. Automatic allocation of file space based on the amount of free space available right there in the volatile dedicated memory. Coming to our next point, input output system management is one of the service offered by the kernel, is responsible for routing the input output request coming from different applications, user applications, to the appropriate input output device of the system. In a well structured operating system, generally what happens is the direct access to input output devices is not allowed. Okay, so any access by the user application going to happen through a application programming interface. This is one of the protocol to have an access to a input output device. So by using a API protocol, the good operating system can offer an access of an input output devices. It is easy for the device manager to keep a track of all that and responsible for handling the input output related operations. Okay, so basically device manager play a role in loading and unloading the device drivers, exchanging the information and the system specific control signals to or from the devices. Any the signals from the input output devices or from the user applications going to be get passed through this particular API protocol, so that operating system play a role as the mediator to connect between these two ends. Okay, coming to a next particular service, that is secondary storage management. Basically it deals with managing the secondary storage memory device connected to the system. The secondary memory can be used as a backup medium for program and data. As you all know that the main memory is volatile in nature, so to have the backup of that particular content, we use the secondary memory. Most of the time the secondary storage is kept in a disks. So the secondary storage management unit is responsible for disk storage allocations and disk scheduling and free disk space management. Coming to a next service, that is the protection system. This is one of the important service offered by the operating system. So basically in modern operating system we are coming with the very interesting and very important service where access to a user or any user application is limited to a certain layers. I mean to say, so for example, the one particular the user is allowed to access to a particular information and the other one is supposed to be restricted. So that restriction can be put by using this particular protection system service of an kernel, so that the any unauthorized access to authorized informations going to be get avoided by making use of the protection system in an embedded system. So coming to a interrupt handler, as we all know what is an interrupt, and we got our detailed discussion in our previous modules. Here the kernel plays its own role with respect to handling this particular interrupt mechanism, which could be a external interrupt or a internal interrupt. We all know that the interrupt supposed to be served with the routines, and the interrupt service routine supposed to be executed. So during the execution, all these important aspects like scheduling and execution, allowing the resources to execute this particular interrupt, so that is going to be taken care, and that has to be led by this particular service called interrupt handler of an kernel, which is responsible for performing all this. Continuing the discussion on the kernel services offered by the operating system, the kernel space and user space are the two important concepts to understand. Any program code corresponding to a kernel, if we store in a primary memory, that area of the memory going to be called as kernel space. The code corresponding to the user applications are stored in a memory area. That area of the memory going to be called as user space. And strictly speaking, the partitioning of this particular memory into a kernel space and the user space going to be done by operating system. The most of the operating systems keeps kernel applications code in main memory, and it is not supposed to swap to a secondary memory. Coming to one new concept, that is monolithic kernel and microkernel. We all know the kernel is the heart of the operating system. Based on the kernel design, the kernels are divided into two. The one is monolithic kernel and the second one is microkernel. In the case of monolithic kernel, all the kernel services run in the kernel space itself, and all kernel modules run within the same memory space under the single kernel thread. Okay, so keeping this in mind, the major drawback of this kind of monolithic kernel is that if any error happens in one of the service, so that leads to a crashing of entire kernel applications. This is one of the big disadvantage in the case of monolithic kernel. This problem can be overcome by having the other type of the kernel called microkernel. So in the case of microkernel, what happens is the very core essential part of the operating system service stored in the kernel space, and rest of the operating system services are implemented in a program known as servers. Basically, this servers which runs in a user space. Okay, so if you ask me what are the essential set of operating system services, could be memory management, it could be timer systems, or it may be interrupt handler. So these are all considered as essential services. What are the benefit of microkernel? If you ask me, it gets you a high degree of robustness and configurability. Let's go with the point robustness. Any problem encountered in running any particular service which basically runs as a server, it can be configured without restarting the entire operating system. So that is the advantage that leads very minimum risk of the kernel getting corrupt. Okay, so coming to a second point, configurability. So any services which runs as a server application can be changed, can be updated on the need base. Okay, this makes the system dynamically configurable. So that's all about on kernel services offered at the operating system. Thank you.